I wanted to do a quick video on something that I've learned about music production, just to set expectations correctly. I'm not well, although I do produce music, it's not at the same level as like a professional studio would. I mean, it kind of is. I've got access to the same equipment, but the kind of stuff we do tends to be backing tracks or um, a little bit of session work, right? I'm the guy that you call in because your song needs, it's basically finished, but it needs an extra track for bongos or something. You know what I mean? I do touch ups. I will record something and send it off to the professional studio, the guys who actually know what they're doing, and they will mix it in. I'll get notes back, and I'll be told, might want to adjust this setting or move your mic or do this, whatever. But yeah, that's basically what I do. I will sometimes mix and master, but again, I'm not doing like you would never have heard of any of the bands or artists that I've done work for. So just be clear about that one. That having been said, I have been working on this particular project. That is my own project. This isn't for a customer. It's actually for myself, and I'm finally at the point where I'm actually ready, basically, to well, it's taking shape. It's at the point where I know exactly where the song is going now. The way I like to do my own personal projects is actually not that much planning in advance. I tend to create as I work. And I'm at the point where I kind of know exactly where the song is going. So this throwaway track is basically the whole song, sort of. There's a lot of misblinks in here, a lot of pathways that I've gone down that I don't work. This is a percussion track that is complete. Basically, it's not polished, but it's complete. This is an orchestral track. This is where I've spent the majority of my time, a decent amount of time, working on an orchestral track in Muse score. It's a full symphony orchestra. There's a lot of instruments to try to arrange and get them sounding good. But the point is this: I'm at the point where, yes, I technically have a complete song, start to finish, um, and it's at this point where I could decide, well, you know what, all this needs is a bit of lead guitar, and I might add some keyboard in, and I think we're done. I could do that, right? I could get away with doing that, and it'd still be a good track, or I could accept the fact that there are a lot of areas, decent amounts of places where things are not quite as good as they could be. Um, there are definitely, especially as I look at this right now, I think it's around here and around somewhere, I mean, I'm guessing probably about there, just looking at the sound wave here. The orchestral part, because this throwaway track was done first, it doesn't quite match the chords in the orchestral track for those two parts. Now, it's not. Sorry, that was something else going on in the background. It's not that it's bad, it's not that it's wrong, but it's not. It could be a lot better. There's often situations where you play a chord that technically it works, but it's not quite correct, if I'm making sense. Maybe the song is building tension, but the chord you've played is kind of attempting to resolve. You can have situations like that. Mathematically it's correct, but it didn't feel right. And there's a couple of places where that's happening. There's also some dynamics issues. There's various things. The point is this: I could basically finish this in the next 30 minutes if I really wanted to, but I'm not going to. I instead want to take the time to polish this. But the question becomes, how much time do I dedicate to this? I could easily spend the next couple of months, right, just going over and polishing every single note and every single drum beat, right? I could do that. But there has to be a line, right? There has to be a point where you say, okay, enough is enough. I've done my job. This is sounding great. You know, basically, there's a saying, and I can't think of it, but it's like, well, it's that whole thing of diminishing returns. There comes a point where either the project gets way over produced. I've seen that happen where I've been involved in projects where I submitted just the one I submitted was actually a bit of lead guitar. And when I got to listen to the final product, I thought to myself, there must be 70 different things in this that you know, you've taken what could have been a nice light acoustic track, right, like a simple folk thing, and you've turned it into a, I don't know how many tracks, overly complicated, overproduced mess. And don't get me wrong, there's certain styles of music where you want it to be like not overproduced, but I mean you want those hundreds of layers of tracks. I understand that, but not in this case. This wasn't the kind of track that you want to do that to, and there's a risk of that happening if you're not careful. You can overproduce something, and so it's like, to me, there's a balance that needs to be achieved. We don't want to overproduce. Don't want to spend too much time working on the same track, but at the same time, we don't want to quit too early. At the state that this track is in now, if I were to just record the lead guitar parts and then maybe some keys depending on how I feel, if I were to do that and then click export into a WAV file and complete the thing, there's too much work left undone. There's too much that I could have done to make it better. And the thing of it is, you'll never actually get a track to be perfect. Just to be clear about that one, you'll never get it 100%. Like, there will always, every track that I have ever worked on, and I've worked on a lot now, I can listen to them, and I promise you I can point out areas and tell you, you know what, I wish that I would have, like that guitar came in a little too loud, or that solo feels a bit too busy for those two bars, you know, or that bend wasn't quite right. So, I mean, there's always something that you can pick out and try to fix, but you got to move on at some point. Do you see the tension going on here, the sort of the balancing act that I'm trying to achieve here? I want this track to sound as good as possible, because obviously, I mean, it's my own personal thing. This is not something that I'll sell probably. It'll just be out there for the world. But at the same time, I have a life. You know, unfortunately, I do have a job. I have work to do. I can't spend the rest of my life working on this one single track. I have to put it to bed at some point. Also, I don't have that kind of tenacity and patience to just have this lifelong project. I want to move on to other projects. You know what I mean? That's the fun of producing music. But achieving that balance is hard. And I feel like there's a decent amount of personal preference in there. I think some people have the drive to keep on working on a track until it sounds like as close to perfect as they can get it. Some people don't have that drive, and they kind of want to get the track done and dusted and move on to the next one. I think there's a risk in the corporate world that I currently work in, where you've got a list of jobs that are coming up. There's a risk that you sort of, because you want to move on to the next track and get that thing started, there is a risk of a temptation rather, to want to complete a track earlier than you maybe should. You know, it's like, you know what, it's good enough, the customer won't notice. By the way, in the world of music, the customer always notices. You know, whereas I think if you're doing this as a hobby, I feel like there's a temptation to keep working on the same project for 2 years. And yeah, it's an interesting balance. So I think what I'm going to do with this project, all of that having been said, again, sorry for all the background noises, I really should have muted that. I think what I'm going to do, not right now, but the next step is to actually re-record this guitar track. because this is just a throwaway track. It's pretty bad. That needs to be done. And then once I've done that, I'll probably go through this orchestral track also and make some tweaks. The drumming track I might make some tweaks also. And once that's done, then I will go on to my electric guitar. So, and this is how I tend to work, by the way, is I hardly ever do a track and then once it's and then well, now it's done, finished, right? This drumming track I created in like one sitting, knowing full well that I would go back to it and probably tweak it. But I kind of need to hear what the orchestra is going to be doing and what the guitar is going to be doing to determine what changes I'd like to make. So this is what tends to happen. In fact, I've already tweaked this percussion track a bit. I like the geography of the track, but there is still some tweaking to do. Anyways, now I'm just rambling, so I'm going to end this video by saying that, work out your own balance. Decide when you've done enough to a track, even if it means setting yourself a deadline. For instance, you might say, okay, you know what, I'm going to work on this thing for 7 days. That's going to be my cut-off time. Now, it might not be. You might get to 7 days and realize this just isn't actually done, and that's fine. You can give yourself an extra day or two. But to have that deadline in mind, I think will help you to sort of move on. If you have a similar problem to me where you can keep on redoing tracks. But I hope this video has been useful to you and helpful. I'll see you guys in the next one.